Welcome back. In the last lecture we saw, how equality is, what are the conception of equality, what 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 is meaning of equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. In this lecture we will try to understand communitarian conception of equality, and in particular we will try to understand equality as a concept as given by Michael Walzer and his concept of complex equality. In which book Michael Walzer gives his conception of justice? In his book Spheres of Justice. Spheres of Justice. In the lecture before last lecture, I think we saw what is communitarian critique of Rawls, and thereby we understood what is Michael Walzer's criticism of Rawls, whereby Walzer says that Rawls gives singular universal conception of justice, which is and which should not be applicable to other spheres. Other spheres, as in there should be particular conception of justice with respect to a particular sphere. There should be a particularist idea of justice, not universal idea of justice. Complex equality of Michael Walzer and Michael Walzer's book Spheres of Justice. Right? What does Walzer say? Walzer says that different goods differentiated ought to be distributed differently in accordance to different principles in different societies by different agents. Right? I will write this quote again, and this quote encompasses the whole of the theory as explained by Michael Walzer. What does Walzer say? Different goods ought to be distributed differently in accordance to different spheres in different societies by different agents. Michael Walzer. Different goods ought to be distributed differently in accordance to different societies in different spheres by different agents. Walzer in Spheres of Justice. Right? What does he mean by different goods? Economic goods, political goods, educational goods, healthcare goods has to be distributed in accordance to different spheres. Again, the same sphere: economic, educational, health, family, justice, and political, etc., etc., etc. In different societies, that distribution of such good in American society and in Indian society will be different by different agents, mean that there should not be functional overlapping between agents, that one agent should not distribute both the political and economic goods. Right? Different goods ought to be distributed differently in different spheres in different societies by different right. This good belong to economic sphere. This good of economic sphere in, let's say, American society should be distributed in according to principles of, let's say, merit, and by different agent, let's say their department of public work departments, PW, their department of PW. So road contract will be a public good. Sphere is economic. society I am assuming to be American, their principle of justice, the principle of justice will be on merit or efficiency. Who is the most efficient in building that road? And and different agent, let's say their PWD department, is saying that I want this road. So agent and same road contract in economic sphere in Indian society can be distributed on, let's say, principle of nepotism, and our government is the agent who distributes such contracts, right? So different goods in different spheres, in different societies, in different principles by different agents. This is his whole theory. This is his whole theory, whereby Walzer says that. Walzer says that. Walzer says that quote, and then Walzer says that liberal theories are one-dimensional. Liberal theories are one-dimensional. One-dimensional because they see equality in economic sense. In economic sense, liberal theories are one-dimensional. They say equality in economic sense. And communitarians say that equality in economic sense is tyranny of market principle. I will explain it. I will explain it with the example. Don't worry. Tyranny of market principle. And they say that when market principle is applied to other spheres of justice, like family, it leads to injustice. Application of market principle, that is, justice in one sphere is applied to other sphere. Application of market principle in other spheres lead to injustice. Hence, justice criteria of justice across principle will vary. Right? Complex equality of Michael Walzer, his idea of spheres of justice. Different goods ought to be distributed differently in accordance to different spheres in different societies by different agents. He says that liberal theories are one dimensional because to equalize people, what liberal theory propose is progressive taxation. What social liberal propose is progressive taxation, that you take from rich and give to poor. This idea of taxation is of market. This idea, which is applicable in market, should not be applied to other spheres of justice. If you apply the idea to other spheres of justice, this is not equality in economic sense. This is equality in economic sense, but this principle of justice cannot be applicable to other institutions like family, like religion. And he says that they say equality in economic sense only if, for liberals, two people are economically equal, they are equal people. And this is what communitarians have problem with. They say they see equality in economic sense. They say that it is a tyranny of market principle, and they say that application of market principle in other spheres lead to injustice, right? If one principle should be applied to only one sphere of justice, and if you apply one principle of justice to other spheres, it lead to injustice. So criteria of justice will be dependent on criteria of justice will be dependent on spheres, which sphere you are talking about, right? Which sphere you are talking about. You cannot apply economic conception of justice everywhere. It will lead to tyranny of market principle. You cannot apply market principle everywhere. For this, for this, Walzer gives his idea of complex equality. Complex equality basically means this, that criteria of justice will be dependent on spheres. Will be dependent on spheres. So he says inequality in one sphere is not undesirable if it does not lead to spillover effect. Right? I will explain this with an example, don't worry. If it does not lead to spillover effect. Right? Basically what Walzer says is that if you are dominant in one sphere and not dominant in other sphere, it is it is it is a good inequality. That inequality is accepted. If you are dominant in one sphere and you are not dominant in other sphere, that inequality is accepted. But if you are dominant in one sphere and if that domination is affecting your position in other spheres, then such inequality is not accepted. Right? You are dominant in one sphere, it should not lead to it should not lead to change in your position in other spheres. Right? It should not lead to spillover effect. Your domination in one sphere should not spill over to other sphere. To stop such spillover, to stop impact of domination in one sphere to other sphere, what you do, you block the exchange between sphere, blocking the exchanges, right? Blocking the exchanges. So you differentiate what kind of domination you want, and you block the exchanges. I will explain this, don't worry. And he says that equality is not desirable and not achievable within a sphere. But if you are dominant in one sphere, that you are economically strong, but then you are politically weak, it is okay. Your your strong position in economy should not lead to you being strong politically. Your strong position in politics should not lead to you becoming strong in economy. That is the idea of complex equality. That exchanges between sphere is not accepted, right? By this, Walzer will say economy in politics is not accepted. What is economy in politics? Corruption. Then family in politics is not accepted. What is family in politics? Nepotism. Right? Economy should not get involved in politics. Family should not get involved in politics. You block economic sphere from political sphere. You block family from politics. That is the idea, right? Let's say there are 5 to 6 spheres of equality. There is there is political equality. There is political equality. Political equality. What is political principle? Power. There is economic equality. What is economic principle? Resources or money. There is educational sphere. Knowledge is the principle here. Health is another sphere. Family is another sphere. Family which has love, right? This is another sphere. Between these spheres of justice, between these spheres of justice, there should not be any exchanges. Between political and economic, there should be no exchange. There should be no connection. Between economy and education, there should be no connection. Between education and health, there should be no connection. So there should be no connection within these spheres. Between these spheres, this is blocking the exchanges, right? Then the second concept of spillover effect. Let's say there are these three people A, B, C, Anne, Bob, Carla, and they are in three spheres. They are in three spheres. One is of politics, other is of economics, and third, let's say, social capital, social relations, social capital, right? Or the I should take the example which I have mentioned. It is of education, right? It is of education. If A is a dominant player in politics, but not in economics or education. B is dominant player in economics, but not in education or politics. And C is dominant player in education, but not in economics or politics. Then, even though within a particular sphere, A, B, C are unequal, their net position is equal. So A will be equal to B, be equal to C because they are dominant in a particular position. In a total sense, they are equal, but but they are equal, but inequalities within spheres is there, right? Is there. So there is no spillover of politics to economics, economics to education, or either or, right? So they are very secluded in that sense. Your dominant position in one sphere should not spill over, should not have its spillover effect to your dominant position in another sphere, right? That is the idea of complex equality. Inequality within sphere is accepted. Inequality, total inequality is not accepted. That is the idea. That is the idea of blocking the exchanges. That is the idea of spillover effect. And that is the idea of complex equality of Michael Walzer and his peers of justice. I hope you understood this idea. This was a very important idea in political science. We'll start with equality of resources of Dworkin, and then we'll start with Amartya Sen's idea of complex equality of capabilities, and that is the idea. Okay, so we'll start with equality of resources of Dworkin, and before that we'll try to understand equality of welfare as well, of utilitarian approach. Thank you so much. I hope this helped. Bye bye.